President Reagan set out for Iceland for a summit meeting with Soviet leader Mikhail Gorbachev to discuss proposals for nuclear arms limitations. For a while, the tantalizing prospect of both sides agreeing to Gorbachev's proposal to eliminate all nuclear weapons within a decade looked close to reality, but in the end the talks faltered on Reagan's refusal to abandon his pet project, the Star Wars missile defense system, and so no agreement was reached. News Corporation, having acquired broadcasting company Metro Media's stations in 6 major US cities, launched the Fox Broadcasting Network, with its first show being The Late Show, hosted by Joan Rivers, followed by new sitcom Married with Children. And on the same day, The Phantom of the Opera, which would go on to become the longest-running Broadway show in history, opened at Her Majesty's Theatre in London, featuring Sarah Brightman and Michael Crawford in the leading roles. Crawford was already a household name in the UK from his role as the effeminate, accident-prone Frank Spencer in 1970s sitcom Some Mothers Do Have 'Em, so critics and audiences alike were somewhat sceptical of his ability to perform a dramatic operatic role. He would prove them wrong, clocking up over 1,300 performances and winning a hatful of awards including an Olivier and a Tony. In Cleveland, Ohio, the local chapter of the United Way attempted to set a world record for the largest number of balloons released in one go, a little under 1.5 million, from a huge net the size of a city block, as part of a fundraising and publicity stunt known as Balloon Fest 86. The record was successfully set, but the helium-filled balloons hit a cold air front, lost height, drifted across the city and onto Lake Erie, causing traffic chaos, shutting the local airport for half an hour, and even contributing to the deaths of 2 men fishing on Lake Erie when the Coast Guard were unable to find them after they were reported missing. Any money raised was dwarfed by the cost of the environmental cleanup and lawsuits, and the Guinness World Records organisation no longer certifies such events. And so to Mexico, where the country would be hosting its first Grand Prix in 16 years. Coincidentally, 1970 was also the last time the FIFA World Cup was held in the country. On that occasion, it was a Ferrari 1-2 for Jackie Ickx and Clay Regazzoni, but the failure of the organisers to prevent many of the 200,000-strong crowd spilling onto the racetrack led to the race being dropped. Since then, the track in the Magdalena Michuca Sports Complex in Mexico City had been restored and reconfigured, and renamed the Autodromo Hermanos Rodriguez, after Ricardo and Pedro Rodriguez, Mexican stars of Formula One in the 1960s, who had both perished behind the wheel, Ricardo at just 20, at the circuit which now bore his name. The track had been resurfaced, though the area remained seismically active, witness the devastating earthquake the previous year, and it soon acquired a number of bumps and ripples that would keep the drivers on their toes, as well as improved pit and paddock facilities. The final corner, Peraltada, was compared to the Parabolica at Monza, but the Mexican corner was both perfectly semicircular and slightly banked for even faster speeds, and it had been considered one of the fastest corners in F1, and the most lethal. This was where the young Rodriguez had gone off. With Mexico City being over 7,300 feet, 2,286 metres above sea level, and the circuit new to pretty much everyone, an extra day of acclimatisation and practice was arranged on the Thursday, and then on Friday it was on for real, with Gerhard Berger topping the timings after day 1, before the championship contenders pushed him down the order on Saturday. In the end, it was Senna on pole, his 8th of the year and a new record for Team Lotus, with Piquet and Mansell 2nd and 3rd in the Williamses, the Brit looking out of sorts with a spot of the old Montezuma's Revenge, then Berger 4th and Prost 6th, sandwiched between the flying Brabhams of Patrese and Warwick. Tambay was 8th, Fabi 9th, and Alliot 10th. Rosberg was 11th, having blown 3 engines and not set a time at all on Friday. The Ferraris looked distinctly unlikely to pick up where they'd left off in 1970, with Alboreto 12th and Johansson 14th. The Arrowses weren't able to use their BMW power this time, and were 20th and 21st, and with no AGS, the grid was back down to 26. 26 became 25 when Rottengatter comprehensively demolished his Zack-Speed late on Saturday, and since the team had brought no spare to save on air freight costs, and the car couldn't be repaired in time, he would not take the start. The lights went green in Mexico, and 24 cars screamed off the line, while Mansell's Williams stayed resolutely put, finally getting going as the other cars streamed past. Mansell slotting in 21st with a lot of work to do. Senna and Piquet meanwhile charged for the first corner side by side and inches apart. Senna, braking very late and fishtailing, got the line, but while the cameras watched the rest of the field stream through turn 1, Piquet got in front, with Berger now third, Prost fourth, and Alboreto having made a fantastic start to go from 12th to 5th. Behind the Ferrari was Alliot, then Brundle, who'd also made a great getaway from 18th to 7th, and Patrick Tambay, meanwhile, would be taking an early bath as he chucked his Haas Lola into the kitty litter on lap 1. The top 4 began to pull away from Alboreto and continued running close together as first Senna attacked Piquet, then Berger attacked Senna, and all the while Prost kept a watching brief behind. Mansell, meanwhile, was making his way rapidly up through the field as Fabi came in with what turned out to be a terminal BMW problem. His teammate Berger lost third to Prost as they came down the main straight, but the Austrian hung on the back of the McLaren and wasn't going to let him go just yet. Alboreto's good start came to naught as once again his turbo failed, by which time Mansell had made his way up to 9th behind the second McLaren of Rosberg. On lap 13 of 68, Mansell peeled in for new tyres, having blistered his right front Goodyear, driving at 10/10ths to recover, and he slithered out of the dusty pit lane to rejoin 12th behind a scrap between Dana and De Cesaris over 10th. Rosberg, meanwhile, was moving up, passing Alliot for 6th and sighting up on Johansson's Ferrari, who was about 12 seconds behind the leading 4, which became the leading 3 on lap 31 when Prost peeled in for his planned stop, taking 11 seconds after a sticking wheel nut. Next in was Piquet, who by then had Senna right on his gearbox once more. Piquet's stop was quicker than Prost's, but Rosberg's went on for some time, till he finally boiled out of the pits to rejoin 7th, only to come back round the next lap to retire with a puncture. Senna, meanwhile, had put his foot down to try and put a cushion between himself and Berger before his pit stop, but blistered his left rear in the process as he approached Mansell to lap in. So in he came on lap 36, the Lotus boys outdoing themselves to get him out again in 7.71 seconds on the road, 22 seconds behind Berger, and looking good to retake the lead when the Austrian pitted. Berger, however, showed no signs of wanting to pit. His Pirelli tyres seemed to be more hard-wearing than the Goodyear's, and Arnoux in the Ligier had gone through non-stop in Portugal. Prost and Piquet were having a fine fight over third, meanwhile, with Prost taking the place on lap 41. Piquet was having some tyre trouble and dropped back and had to make a second stop, which was quick, but left him some distance behind Prost. Before long, the McLaren was right on Senna's rear wing too, and overtook Senna as the Lotus peeled in to replace his tyres, having blistered his left front. All of which left, with 18 laps to go, Berger still out in the lead, and apparently in no tyre trouble, with Prost some 35 seconds behind and charging. Senna third and defending against Johansson, Piquet 5th and Patrese 6th, while Mansell was 8th and also charging, setting fastest laps. 3 laps later Piquet was in again, having once again blistered his tyres. It was just as well the Williams team had got pit stops down to a fine art, but it wasn't going to improve Piquet's mood any. Nelson was now down in 6th place and had Mansell on his tail, and gunning for that last points-paying position. Nigel, of course, would have to discard a 5th or 6th place result anyway, but he could at least deny Piquet a point, and the pair traded fastest laps. Senna, meanwhile, still couldn't shake Johansson from behind him until the Ferrari engine did what it does so well and expired in a cloud of smoke, flame and Swedish swearing just 4 laps from the end. Patrese was promoted to 4th and promptly celebrated by skidding into the barriers. Even he couldn't seem to believe he'd just done that, which put Piquet and Mansell up into 4th and 5th places. Gerhard Berger swept home to take his maiden win by some 25 seconds over Alain Prost, with Senna joining them on the podium. Piquet picked up 3 points for 4th, Mansell would have to discard his 2 for 5th, and Philippe Alliot took his career first point in 6th place. Alliot stopped on his slowing down lap to pick up his stranded teammate Arnoux and Johansson, only to break down himself. Johansson hailed a passing Williams, and Nelson took all 3 of them back to the pits. When a young Senna had tested for Brabham back in 1983, Nelson Piquet had rather derisively called him a Sao Paulo taxi driver, but it appeared that today he was going to be the cabbie. The strains of Land am Berge, Land am Strome rang out on the podium for Austria's new hero, and whether one regarded the Benetton team as a brand new outfit or a continuation of the Tollman team who came to the sport in 1981, it was a brand new name on the list of winning constructors too. And Pirelli could also be very happy with a win after years of frustration in what looked almost certain to be their penultimate F1 race, at least for the time being. Nigel Mansell, meanwhile, could at least be thankful that of the 3 drivers on the podium, 2 of them weren't in the championship running, and he would go to the final race in Australia with a 5-point lead over Prost and a 7-point lead over Piquet. Whatever else happened in Adelaide, if Mansell stood on the podium, he would be world champion.